record. All right, so you all can see my desktop, all right?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
so recording on. Cynthia beat me to it. All right, so let's move ahead. So this member meeting tonight is really part two of what we did last month. Last month was electrifying. It was about the Electrification Pledge. Many of the things suggested to us by Rewiring America about the home and the massive impact that we can have in our homes and emissions in general. And essentially, we were saying that as much as 75% of fossil fuel emissions can be handled right out of the home in a proactive way, and that 42% of those decisions can be made by you. Now, we're going to play a little video tonight that's going to expand on it a little more from Dr. Leah Stokes' point of view, but it is about families and it is about Monday. So the member meeting agenda tonight is, as I just described, I'm going to put a couple of slides up about the emissions challenge, and there's some new information that's come up because I want to remind you how urgent this thing is before we get into what we're going to do about it. So this is about despair in the real pickle we're in as a world and as a nation, but then the positive things we can do to really solve those things. And then we'll play the video presentation of Dr. Leah Stokes. I will summarize, just like in one slide, her main points of emphasis. We'll get into the Electrification Pledge, which Pam will remind us of that. And also Bruce will weigh in on that as well, and the importance of that, individual contributions and how that can expand out. And then we'll have an interactive discussion and Q&A.
And if any of that gets damaged, I will actually be really upset because
Can you
all of
mute yourself,
my
please?
most expensive things are in that cabinet. So I asked that it not be moved, but I noticed today when I was
Hey, Karen,
back there,
could
that
you
it was
mute
moved.
yourself?
So
Karen, you
I'll
need
mute
to
her.
mute yourself.
I just muted her. Okay, so let me finish what I was saying. Then we'll get into interactive discussion for the rest of the meeting, and that's probably going to be 30 minutes or more of the meeting. So this isn't a quick Q&A at the end. We want to have real dialogue with everybody and talk about things. If you have concerns about being able to do something, let's get it out on the table. Let's thrash it around. We've got experts in this meeting tonight from almost every aspect of this thing. So with that said, many of you might be aware that it's making the national news that the new National Climate Assessment has come out. And while I haven't finished reading it all myself, I will just say that they are very clear that it's not only a serious issue, but it is and will be increasingly affecting every part of the United States in serious and meaningful or not meaningful ways. The second thing is recently Dr. James Hansen has done a report and some projections. And to remind you, he stood before the Senate in 1988 and made predictions. Many of his predictions were thought to be over the top. And, some senators like Mr. Imhoff made fun of him, bringing snowballs into the Senate chambers and all that kind of stuff. Even some scientists really said, well, I don't know if we'll kind of go along with James Hansen. Thing is, Hansen was right about most of what he said back then. And this new report is frankly quite a challenge, because he's really saying that this 1.5 degree increase in heat is it's toast. Those are his words. It's just not going to happen. And even like two degrees would take dramatic effort on the part of people around the world to be able to keep that to 2 degrees. He's projecting we're going to be hitting more like 4.8 degrees C increase in heat, which and that's metric, of course. Which of course, you can turn that into Fahrenheit, it's much bigger. And then it's not just a linear increase in heating, which, many famous scientists are still saying, Michael Mann and some very good people are saying it's a linear increase, which is scary on its own. He's really saying that increase is now becoming an existential increase, which means it's curving up. So with that said, the IPCC also has weighed in with their latest projections, and While they're not as it's not as much of a downer as Hansen, even they are saying, you know, it's looking like 2.5 to 4 degrees Celsius or centigrade, and likely more like 3C. So this is like wicked serious, okay? And so when we look at this, there are two specific graphs I want to show you. Last month I didn't show you this. I showed you a simple one that really I don't think had impact. First of all, you all need to know that most of the time when they measure greenhouse gas emissions, they measure them in metric tons. And so Bruce Mazer was good enough to find this and share it with us, that a metric ton is 27 feet high, 27 feet wide, 27 feet deep, about as big as a two-story house. So, you know, extremely serious, to say nothing, you know, to at least extremely serious. And so when we measure global emissions and even national emissions, we're talking in gigatons now. And a gigaton is 1 billion metric tons, or 2.2 trillion pounds. So as we look at this this graph, this linear increase, so this isn't what Hansen is quite saying now. This is the kind of the normal view that, you know, not only Project Drawdown, in this case, who created this graph, but other people have almost identical ones because it's based on the same information, that is saying that this linear increase like this could actually happen. And what we actually have to do is decrease our emissions like this, which is about a 50% reduction. And then again, about another 50% getting down to net zero by 2050. And actually, we're trying to get zero emissions, but net zero means that the sinks are going to absorb a lot of those emissions in order to have the effect of net zero. So we look at this. So where are we? We're at about 59 gigatons, or 59 billion metric tons, or 129.8 trillion pounds of emissions. And the problem with those emissions is they go up into the atmosphere, and carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for hundreds of years, as much as 1,000 years. So it's not just the emissions, it's what's already there, which is very serious, of course. And so what we need to do is cut the emissions about in half to about 29 gigatons. And in doing so, we're essentially saying we need to get back to 1970. The atmosphere that existed in 1970, that's where we need to be. And when we get to net zero, that means our emissions will be similar to 1940. I wanted you to have that perspective of the seriousness of the problem. Now, if we look at the United States, we reviewed this last month, the historical emissions are improving. Hey, since 2007, they're coming down. And you can see there, it's probably about 5.6 gigatons, or, you know, billions of metric tons. And, you know, you can see COVID here, kind of a dip. So that's kind of where we are. And so that's good news. And, you know, current policies show that, you know, that would improve. There's three kind of views of that improvement. And the good news is the IRA, which is really going to help us a lot, is showing that it's going to improve even more. And of course, the real value of the IRA is the fact that down beyond 2030 is the really greatest effect on the emissions. The trouble with this graph is that the Paris Agreement says we should have been at about 3.2 or 3.1 gigatons. And that's from the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. We should have dropped with a line approximately like that, which we didn't do. So with that said, I will just finalize this before we get into the video and say, this scary picture on the left, not only are some good, coal plants actually closing, which is really good, but we're actually building 20% of our emissions. We're actually building, or new additions to capacity for fossil fuels is in the natural gas industry there. And the reason for this is we're still buying fossil fuel gasoline. We're still buying fossil fuel methane to cook with and heat our homes. We're still buying fossil fuel electricity, and many people didn't know we could change. And so we got to make sure they know. and we don't know how to change in many cases. So we got to help people understand what it is that they could do to change. We don't know how to change. We may not know about the incentives, like in the IRA, there's some great stuff in there, and we may be afraid to change. So with that, I'll just say that let's move into the more positive thing. The serious stuff's behind us. Let's get to the some of the solutions that we talked about last month, and we'll see the Anton Vonk, Associate Professor of Environmental Politics in the Department of Political Science at the University of Santa Barbara. She is the author of Short-Circuiting Policy. She had a lot to do with the creation of Build Back Better, which became a version of it became the IRA. And it was a top 25 climate books on the New York Times. She was also a contributing author of the incredible, excellent book called All We Can Save that we did in our book club, I think a year or two ago. And then she's a senior policy counsel at Rewiring America, which is a terrific organization. So what I'd like to do now is take us into that and hope that the video streams with us all on Zoom so that you can hear it just really good. So let's hope it works out. And here we go.
Well, hello, everyone. I don't know who that person was who was introduced, but she sounds super fancy. It's great to be here with all of you, people who are out there in the trenches every day trying to make change in the world. And I feel really blessed to be on the stage with people like Representative Jayapal, who I worked alongside to help pass what was called Build Back Better and the Inflation Reduction Act, and is really the kind of leader that we need more of in this country. So, you know, you may have thought about climate change. I'm just going to guess that you have. And sometimes when you do that, people ask you this question: what can I do about climate change? Maybe you've asked yourself that question. Maybe you asked yourself that question today. And the answers often come in the form of this, right? The carbon footprint. What can I do? I can plant trees. I can drive less. I can eat less meat. Reuse water. Don't use plastic. And just to be clear, I support all these things. I do all these things. But it also probably leaves us with a sense that that's not enough, or that that's not really the nature of the problem. And so what I'm going to talk about today is this. You might have gone a little further into this what can I do question, learn more about climate change, and what you might have discovered is that carbon pollution, greenhouse gas pollution, comes from lots of different parts of the economy, and it comes in a lot of different forms, right? So yes, there is our old friend, carbon dioxide, which we're breathing out of our own bodies every moment. But then there's also these other weird things like methane, nitrous oxide, HFCs, super pollutants, right? And so we think, oh gosh, there's so many different chemicals that I have to get on top of. And then we start learning about the different sectors of the economy, right? We learn about the electricity sector, which I decided to spend my life doing, thinking it was a remarkably boring topic that no one would care about, and then discovering that people did care about it, which is nice, because it's rather important, actually, from a greenhouse gas pollution perspective. Or maybe you've decided to go deep on transportation. You're passionate about biking or public transit. Maybe you've discovered there's this giant pink part of the economy called industry that is a huge chunk of the pollution problem and rather difficult to clean up. Or maybe you're excited about agriculture. I'm sure many people here are, or buildings, right? So you start to think, oh my gosh, there's so many different pollutants and there's so many different parts of the economy that we have to clean up. I am overwhelmed. I'm going to simplify that for you. I'm going to tell you that we really just need two things to clean up about 3/4 of carbon pollution. And this isn't a magic trick. It's something that probably took me, I don't know, 14 years to figure out on my own climate journey. But the two big things are clean electricity and electrification. Now, they do not solve all the problems, but they solve about 3/4 of the current problem. How does that work? Well, first, we clean up the power sector. We get to 100% clean power. And then we use that clean power to power our cars, even our bicycles, our homes, parts of heavy industry. And that cleans up another half of the problem. So electrification plus clean electricity is 75% of the climate solution. Now, it's not everything. You may notice agriculture is not really in there. Parts of heavy industry require more than this. So I haven't given you 100% of the answer, but I've given you 75%. And I've given it to you in a relatively simple mental model that you can take forward into your daily life to make changes that are structural, that actually attack the heart of the fossil fuel industry. So what I want you to think about is everywhere you burn fossil fuels, like in a car, in the stove, in your house, in the hot water tank, in the furnace, everywhere you're burning something, you're seeing a blue flame, turn that into electricity, turn that into clean power. And that is a pathway out of this destructive fossil fuel industry into a future of sort of abundance. So the first step, oh, we're feeling excited about abundance. Nice. Me too. Yeah, and it's also a counter narrative to what is so often told about our movement, that our movement is about scarcity, that my solution is for you to sit alone in your house in a big sweater, I don't know what, not eating, don't eat anymore. It's not my solution for you, okay? Just to be clear. So what is step one? Step one is 100% clean electricity, and we got a bit of a timetable on here. I'm not going to be too specific. I'm going to say ASAP. That's when we have to do that. So what do we mean by clean electricity? Now, this can get a little controversial, so let's break it down. Of course, there's the stuff that pretty much everybody is for. Even Republicans actually like this stuff, turns out. Republicans put solar on their roof as frequently as Democrats. Did you know that? Research by my colleagues at UC Santa Barbara have shown that. Wind energy, generally fairly popular. So those are things that we know are renewable energy sources. There's other sources that we could put in the middle there that are going to be less part of the transition, but are still part of the picture. Those are hydroelectricity. Now, the thing is, we've already developed most hydropower sources in this country. Hydropower supplies about 10% of our power, a little bit less. And at the most, we could expand that by 50%. So we could go from like 10, it's not really 10. We could go from, it is from like 10 to 15, okay? So there's a hard cap on that. And of course, many people have concerns about expanding hydropower because its effect on fish, for example. So, hydropower is likely to be a limited resource to the size that we already have it today. There are other things like geothermal. Geothermal is another resource that we could use more of, but it's also limited. It has to be done in specific geographic areas. So although Iceland can run a lot of itself off of geothermal, and even parts of Hawaii can, it's not as easy to do that everywhere in the United States. There are other things like wave and tidal energy that have some challenges because just as a sort of easy way to think about it, the more you move stuff, the more it breaks. You may notice bicycle breaks sometimes. So do those technologies. And then at the bottom, we have two technologies that are a lot more controversial, that have more side effects associated with them, but that are currently part of our energy mix or are likely to become more part of it. One is, of course, nuclear energy. I'm sure there are people here who don't support nuclear energy, and that is valid if you feel that way. I myself did not support nuclear energy, but I had a change of heart when I realized that it is carbon-free power and that if we shut it down currently, it will be replaced by fossil fuels. So there are hard choices. See, I'm saying that if you don't agree with me, that's a valid thing. You may have recalled I literally said that. So that's valid. It's okay to have disagreements in democracy. We don't all have to agree with one another. And I said that I myself shared your opinion. And I myself had different opinions. And that is okay. It's okay to have different opinions from one another. Okay. There's also hydrogen, which is another really thorny problem that's coming for us. So get excited for all the joyous challenges of the clean electricity transition. The point is that right now, 60% of our electricity system is made from fossil fuels. 40% is made from sources that don't emit carbon. What we have to do is get to 100% clean power. And it's valid, like I said, if you don't like the orange slice, you're anti-orange slice, that's okay. But what you'll have to do is figure out how you're going to get rid of the orange slice and the dirty coal and gas ones too. And that is a big challenge, right? And I think in the long run, that is what we're going to do. Absolutely. But we've certainly seen moments where when we shut down a plant, for example, like Indian Point in New York, that additional gas was burned in communities of color in New York City. And that has impacts on, for example, young kids. Like I literally have a Black nephew growing up in New York City who is probably breathing dirtier air because of that. That's not speculation, that's just reality. So we have to make tough, difficult choices in the clean energy transition. Now, the point is that we're about here in Where Clean Power, we gotta get really far, really fast. And you may notice that I wrote 150% there. Why? Because not only do we have to clean up the energy system at the size that it is today, we have to go farther because all that new clean power is going to be necessary for electrification. So what is step 2? Step 2 is electrify everything we can. And I put the we can there because sometimes people say, but you can't electrify everything. And so yes, fair enough. We will do everything we can. So right now, you may not realize it, but there are people in this room running fossil fuel power plants. What? I was a fossil fuel power plant operator as recently as 3 months ago because I had a gas stove, a furnace, a gas furnace, and a gas water tank. It was hanging out in my house, unbeknownst to me. Well, it was actually beknownst to me, but maybe it's unbeknownst to you. And so you may not realize it, but you're operating a fossil fuel power plant. Now, guess what? You don't have to. You can change those machines out. And that is a big activity that I want to challenge all of us to take on because there are now induction stoves. There are heat pumps. There are heat pump hot water heaters. And if we can turn those into electric machines, we can use, for example, the solar panels on our roof if we're lucky enough to have them, or if our neighbors have solar panels to power those machines. So think about those machines in a different way. And you've probably heard in the last few months that operating those machines also has pretty bad health impacts on you and your loved ones in your home. Because we're burning something, right? You guys notice that when you burn stuff, it makes pollution, particulate matter, nitrous oxides, etc. And it turns out that, for example, operating a gas stove is like having your friend come over and smoke in your living room. Would that be super polite in 2023 to go to your friend's house and just whip out a cigarette? No. Did we used to do that back in the day? Yes. Did we decide that maybe we're not going to do that anymore? Yes. So that's the same thing we're going to do with our gas stoves. Yeah, nice. You do it, sister. I like it. And the thing is, during COVID, many of us became more aware about indoor air quality. Some people got an indoor air quality monitor. Who got that? Who's the nerds in the room looking at numbers in their house? I want to challenge you to go cook a dinner on your gas stove and just see what happens. You don't need to read the peer-reviewed scientific literature. You can just look at numbers on your own monitor and discover that particulate matter and nitrous oxides or VOx are going through the roof. And I did that myself, and I decided to change to induction stove. Now, the interesting thing is that it's not just our houses. These are all across our society. And I work at an organization called Rewiring America that is focused on electrifying the United States. And we have been blessed by two folks named Saul Griffith and Sam Kalish, who decided to count all the machines in the country that run on fossil fuels. Turns out it's a very difficult task, but there's a lot of them. So there's about 120 million of these gas stove-like things, including ovens and grills. There's 117 million gas furnaces. There are 20 million gas dryers, 120 million gas water heaters. Of course, there's all these cars that also run on fossil fuels. And then there's these power plants as well. And it's interesting because there's also 200 newly proposed gas power plants right now that we have to figure out how to stop. So there's a lot of machines to do. And when you count them all up, the other thing you want to think about is how long do these machines last? If your gas water heater dies, as one of my friends did 2 days ago, he wrote to me, this is what happens now. It's a bit of a tragedy, I suppose. Leah, my gas hot water tank broke. What should I do? I said, okay, I got it for you. Okay, there's a new, that Rheem makes a new heat pump hot water tank that you can just plug into the wall, blah, 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 etc. So he wrote to me today, this morning. He said, I did it. I bought the heat pump hot water tank. I was like, yes, I've converted one machine. Very exciting. I have to do slightly more than that. But that's the kind of thing we have to think about. When a machine dies, we must replace it with an electric alternative. Yes, exactly. Because what happens if we don't? If we don't, that water heater is going to belch out pollution for about another decade. If we build those 200 gas plants, they're going to belch out pollution for 30 to 60 more years. What was that plan that we had to stop putting out pollution in 2050? And how many years from now is 2050? Like 17? So wait a second. How is that going to work? How is it going to work if we keep putting in more fossil fuel appliances that last longer than the time period of our goals? It's not going to work. We have to make every new machine electric. And when you think about it, when you add up all those numbers, it turns out there are 1 billion machines in the United States alone that run on fossil fuels. That's overwhelming, but it's also an opportunity. Because when we ask the question of what can I do, are there 1 billion Americans? No, there are not. It means that every single person in this room, every single person in this country can electrify a couple machines. And that is a really important infrastructure change that we can make to stop using fossil fuels. I want to tell you some good news so you don't feel sad, / I generally feel optimistic about the future. Guess what? Heat pumps outsold gas furnaces for the first time last year. Isn't that exciting? So we are at an inflection point. Heat pumps are not just better, they are going to be cheaper to operate in most parts of the country, especially for people who are literally using oil or propane to heat their homes. And there's like 20 million American households who are doing that, for example. But even many folks on gas or on older versions of electric machines that use a lot of electricity. And where are we at in terms of the stock flow problem? Well, here we go. We've got about, I don't know, maybe 20%, or man, it's probably less, 10, 15% of the furnace problem done. The water heater problem, oh, is a bad one. This is why I was so excited that this morning I converted one water heater to a heat pump, because they basically don't exist, but they will soon. And I have one myself. Cooking, we're actually doing great on cooking. The interesting thing about the gas wars is that it's mostly people in California and New York who are cooking on gas stoves. So all these Democrats, they're going to have to notice that they're polluting their own children and stop doing that. And then we have cars. Electric vehicles are actually 25% of new sales as of last quarter in California. So we are starting to really make progress there. Yeah. And when we think about our 2050 goals and when we take them actually seriously, what we have to notice is that there's a stock flow problem here, right? We have to be getting to a point where 100% of new sales are electric appliances this decade. And it's really exciting because the Bay Area Air Quality District just voted to do that. So first in the country, good job, Bay Area. And Governor Newsom has actually been a massively leading governor who's been saying that he's going to stop these sort of gas sales in this state as well. The cool thing I'll tell you is that electric machines get cleaner every year. They are as clean as the electricity system is the day that they get put in, but guess what's going to happen? We're going to get to 100% clean power, and guess what's going to do to your machine? Not going to have any pollution associated with it. So they get cleaner every year. That will never happen. I don't care how efficient your gas furnace is, it will never be as clean as a heat pump. If you'd like to know how to do this yourself, I recommend you go to rewiringamerica.org. We have a calculator that helps you figure out how much money you can get from the Inflation Reduction Act. This summer, we're going to be launching an even more tailored tool that can help you look at your specific house, your specific machines, connect you with contractors, and make it easier to do. I'll just say that I know not everybody owns a home, but maybe you can lobby someone who does, first of all, support that. And many people have sent me pictures like this who are renters. And I did this too for a while, just to be clear. You get an induction cooktop, costs like $40. You get an electric oven, you stick it on top of your gas stove, you electrify. So I just want to leave you with this thought that when people ask you, what can I do about climate change? And when you ask yourself, what can you do about climate change? I want you to think about electrification, because this is really about getting fossil fuels out of your life. And it is not a repeated behavior. It's a one-time infrastructure change. If you electrify your house and you sell it, guess what? The next person lives in an electric home too. So thank you so much for hosting me today. It's been wonderful to meet all of you, and I hope that you go out and electrify your lives and make all the change possible that you can.
Okay. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. I just want to comment before we get into the general discussion that from a residential point of view, you know, she talked about all these forms of clean energy. From a residential point of view, solar, first of all, solar, out of all new renewable energy being added to the grid, 48% of it is solar. So solar isn't just from a grid point of view supplying power. Solar is something you can do. It might be, you know, it might be community solar, or it could be rooftop solar. But it's, as she said, it's about 25%. It needs to be 7 times larger than the baseline for 2032. For electric vehicles, it's about 25%, she said, need to account for 65% of all new global car sales by 2030 and 100% by 2035. Why? Because as she indicated, in order to be net zero by 2050, there's a time offset. So if you take 12 to 15 years off of 2050, you're in 2035. And right now, 14 states have agreed to do that, and 7 of them have driven that into their legislation, into their laws. And then heat pumps, there's all kinds of different heat pumps, as she said. Space heating replaces the heater as well as the air conditioner, water heaters, elimination of gas dryers and go to heat pump dryers, etc. And then finally, all of this is super important because we need to achieve net zero by 2050. So with that, I want to now turn this over to Pam to talk about kind of a pledge that we want to take that says if we want to pledge to eliminate fossil fuels, well, it starts with us. Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, and Tom, you have the slide on the pledge, right?
Yeah, right here.
Okay. Well, what I want to say about the pledge before we get into a discussion is that when I decided to take this pledge, because I figured that I actually heard Leah Stokes's presentation a couple months ago, and I thought, you know, I really have to do this. I mean, I just have to bite the bullet and do this. And so I got to get ready. I listened to Derek Eder here in Oak Park, who is here with us tonight, I think. And he had done this in his home, or was in the middle of doing it. And I thought to myself, well, what do I have to do if I really mean this? I thought, God, this is going to be so expensive. You know, new furnace and water heater, you know, because I have gas and stove, and this is really, and I've got a hybrid car, but I don't have an electric yet, and man, this is going to cost me a lot of money. And so how am I going to do this? So what I want to say about this is, once you take the pledge, then you've got to go through the process of getting ready to do it, meaning you got to investigate the contractors. And we've now got a website, or on our website, a way for you to find those contractors. You've got to you've got to think about what order you're going to do it in. You know, the big ones are like your car, your furnace, your water heater. Those are huge part of the fossil fuel emissions. So what I have had to do, and I'm still working on it now. I'm working out a schedule. And I went down and I looked to see when my furnace got put in, which I had never paid attention to. And I've got to figure out what is its useful life and when do I have to start getting a contractor to work on this. So you've got to do some planning. But I really believe she's right that if 75% of the problem can be solved by electrification and we can be a part of the solution, then why don't we do it? Well, I think sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's just, I've got to call these contractors and it's going to take time. I don't have time, whatever. But if you space it out and do one thing at a time, you can also figure out a way to afford it by doing one thing at a time. And with the incentives from the IRA, you can get some money taken off what you're spending. So what the pledge really says is that when my home appliances and my car reach the end of their useful life, and I have to get something anyway, I have to buy a new furnace, I have to buy a water heater, I pledge to be ready to replace them with electric and to do it. And then I will try to encourage my family, friends, and community to do that as well. So that is, Derek is my model because he's been doing it. And then he's been doing this blog on how he did it and what it has cost him. And he's encouraging people like me to follow in his footsteps. So I feel like if we just created some breadcrumbs for people, first do this, here are the contractors, here's what it's going to cost, here's what the IRA will give you back. Do that this year, and then maybe your furnace is going to be replaced in 4 years. Then do that then, and have a way of kind of mentally preparing yourself to make these changes in a certain order over a period of time so that it does not feel like you're going to break the bank. So that's what we're asking our chapter members to do. Look at the end of the useful life of every appliance you've got that's run on gas, write it out, make a list, and then figure out what you're going to do and be ready to replace them. If you wait until your water heater breaks, then you're going to go, oh my gosh, who do I talk? Wait a minute, I never figured out who to talk to. And then it's just easier to go and stick in another gas water heater. So you got to do the mental work to make the plan. And that's what I think kept me from doing this for a very long time until I saw Derek's work and I listened to Leah Stokes. Those two things were my, they were kind of like the thing that got me going. And so whatever it takes to get you going, we want you to take this pledge and then do it, actually do it. And we want to then start to measure, how are we doing against our goals? We've got over 600 members in our chapter. I wonder how many of you we could get to do this, to take the pledge and actually do it. It sounds so simple, but it takes a lot of planning and it takes the right spacing out. So I would say, and Hobie, yes, we do have a chart that does a cost comparison. In fact, Tom, you created a chart that's very detailed and lays out what the cost would be if you had to buy a new furnace anyway.
Yep.
You bought a gas furnace versus an electric furnace, a heat pump. And you can make a comparison between the two. And Tom, is that on our website already or not?
The Excel spreadsheet is on our website. If you go there, it'll show the percent reduction, the emissions saved, and it will show, like, I think the 20-year impact, and
Impact.
also the savings, the cost. But also there's a lot more detail besides what's on the website in terms of, it's just dramatic. And it's even more dramatic if you do it all on solar, there's
Right.
just no question about it.
Right. Now, there's a second part of the pledge that we're not asking everyone to take, but we hope that some of you will. And that is, if you really want to be an activist and, and push it out there, then we're saying, will you, agree to encourage your elected officials and their staff to provide, in other words, will you get out there and try to get other people to know about this and do this? Will you do community events, inform businesses, churches, libraries? And some of us are doing that, but not everybody has time for that. And some people don't like to present to other people, so it may not work for all of you, but you can do the first part. That is up to you and your family. There's nothing stopping you except for, especially if you have to replace this thing anyway, the only thing you've got to do is plan for it, get the IRA incentives. And I don't think the cost will be that much more than it would have been if you had replaced it with fossil fuel appliance. That's even true for electric cars. There are many electric cars that you can purchase that have enough range and that are at a low enough price point, and with the $7,500 tax credit, that you can manage to really spend about the same amount you would have if you'd bought another gas car. So
in terms of buying it, but on the long run, it's cheaper.
It's cheaper. Of course, it's cheaper. Yes. I'm just talking about the upfront, because a lot of my own brother, said, well, I can't afford to put up front this much extra money. And we had a big argument about, should he buy a hybrid or an electric car? And basically he was going to spend more over the next 10 years on the hybrid. So that's the kind of conversation that if you had it with your own family members, you might be able to change some minds. So anyway, that's what we're rolling out. And Bruce and Cynthia and others can tell you the specifics of how we're doing it. But what I'm asking you to do is to really take this seriously and think about the decisions you are making. Because I had to kind of fess up to it and say, all right, what am I really going to do about this? And I think, I feel kind of guilty that I didn't do it sooner, but I'm ready to go now. I'm searching out the contractors, and I'm taking the steps, and it feels good when you do that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, turning that despair into action.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Pam. Bruce, your comments on this?
Yeah, that's a good segue, that turn the despair into action. When we got together as a leadership team, it was last summer in Pam's house, we look back at our, what we've been involved in, and we've had some successes with government officials and with getting in, programs and supporting the IRA Act, and also, making sure that we're educating as much as possible. But we realized one thing, and that is, now that the IRA has passed and you have all these programs, our macro approach right now needs to get rules and policies in place to aid the climate, now are dependent on us to really start a grassroots movement for the individual to take advantage of these laws and to take advantage of these programs. So that's what led to the Climate Pledge. And it is very, very fulfilling to think that, not only can you as an individual make a change, and when you think about it, I think Tom mentioned the statistic that 42% of all greenhouse gas emissions are basically dependent on kitchen table decisions, your decisions for cars, for how your home is heated and whatever. And it's just an extremely important thing to not only do for your own plan, as Pam has mentioned, but also to talk this up with family and friends. And I'll just give you a little story. Everybody, Pam was talking about her brother. I'll talk about my sister, and that is, she was renovating her house, and I finally got to her house towards the tail end of when it was almost complete. And as I walked through her kitchen, I realized I'd never communicated to her about the choices that she had. And she chose a gas stove and a gas oven, and she had she put in a new gas furnace downstairs. And when I started talking to her, I realized that even though she knew I was involved with Climate Reality Chicago, she didn't know about the Electrify. She was influenced by the natural gas industry saying that gas is a fuel that is relatively clean and whatever, and that's just not true. So I felt bad, but I thought to myself, you know what? We all have an obligation to do this in our own life, and also talk to friends and family, and if possible, to wider audiences, as the second part of the pledge says that. And it will make a difference. And so if you look at 2023 or 2024, now that the IRA is passed, this is what we have to do to go forward, to not only educate ourselves, but to educate everybody else around us. And so given that Thanksgiving is coming up, might be a really good topic to have at your Thanksgiving and dinner. I read somewhere that climate activists only talk about the climate with 15% of their interactions with other people. Well, maybe it should be 80 to 90%. And if it turns some people off, well, you might save on Christmas gifts later, so you'll save your money anyway.
Yeah. So the average home emits 20 in the United States, emits 22 metric tons. So don't think your own contribution is minor. It can be major, and wealthier people emit as much as 2 to 3 times that. Second part of it is the micro can become the macro. So when Pam talked about the first part of the pledge, that's about you. But to make that micro thing into the macro thing, it's the second part. We're hoping you will do that. And you don't have to be a full-time activist. Just start talking to people, because largely we're social animals. And when we do something ourselves, we learn. And when we learn, we can share it with others. And when we share, we can help others. And that's how it perpetuates. So, when we look about the stone, we want to throw that stone, as one of those famous people said, across and skip it across the pond. That's how we can impact people. And in fact, that's about the only way real change happens. It's less about politics and more about how we can cascade this. So with that, let's get into the Q&A. We have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get into that. Why don't you raise your hand to surface your questions?
I think I see Robin's husband, Arnold.
If you wouldn't mind, use the reactions at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah,
because I want to make sure we do them in the order. And what it does is it tells me up at the top of the screen here who's first, second, and third. So go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, this is Arnie.
Oh, I'm sorry, Arnie. Go ahead. Hi,
Arnie. Yeah. So Robin's husband. I just want to let you know that I took the pledge 42 years ago.
Stop it.
When I met Robin and was shocked by her electric personality.
Get out of here. Honestly, honest to goodness.
Anything else, Rachel?
It's not Rachel.
I thought,
But Stephen has his hand up.
yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I don't know about all of you, but I'm a renter, and given my age, I probably will never buy another house in my life. And so I've been talking to my landlord as she bought this place 2 years ago. We moved in soon after she bought it. And it's an old, built in 1928. And, we have a lot of houses like that in the Chicago area. And there needs to be a major push on working with landlords. But there's a lot of misinformation out there. She's a very educated woman. She's an oncologist, but we were talking about going to heat pumps. And she said, well, the contractors are all telling her not to do that. And, electric cars, no one's buying electric cars anymore. They're sort of not where they're supposed to be. You can't charge them. They don't go very far. So there's all this misinformation out there that we really need to combat. And given how, I don't know what the percentage of buildings in the greater Chicago area are that are rentals, but I would assume it's substantial. And that's a huge impact on climate if we don't change those. But I think we're going to need to lobby our legislators about making things more available to landlords and such to go down that road. And then we also have to find contractors who know what they're talking about, because essentially most contractors in Evanston, and I'm with a group in Evanston that are doing this work, are poo-hawing heat pumps and all that stuff. So if anyone's interested in working on this issue of the rental community, which is huge, I'd be interested in working.
Yeah, these are very good points. And in fact, we're going to start posting a lot of this information on our website, lists of contractors, ways, because you're right. You go to a car dealer, they'll try and talk you into a gas car. And it's the same thing with heat pumps and everything else. So we're going to have, certified contractors that people like Derek Eater know that did well and what he went through. Okay, Kathy, go ahead.
Oh, I'm next. All
Yes.
right. Some of you know me. I'm Kathy Clarkin. Just introduce myself first. I'm co-chair of NEST, the Naperville Environment and Sustainability Task Force. And I also, with some other folks, Chris Murphy included, started Accelerate Climate Solutions, which is a local nonprofit. Just a couple of points that I wanted to say is I'm 100% on board with the pledge. We just moved into a house. I've already had a bunch of contractors out here, very excited to cut off the pipe to NICOR party when it's all done. And as far as like laying those breadcrumbs that somebody mentioned earlier, I happen to have an interview with Naperville Magazine today, and I kind of mentioned what I'm going through with this process and kind of like what Derek did with blogging it. And so potentially we're going to have like a series of articles in Naperville Magazine talking about that process and like putting the human face to electrification. And the other thing I just wanted to mention really quickly is having in my old house put in a heat pump and now looking to put a heat pump in my new house. In the last 2 years, it has gotten slightly better with finding contractors that actually don't give you misinformation and don't, like just try to sell you a furnace. But it's still kind of bad out there. So one of the projects that we're working on with Accelerate Climate Solutions, which maybe some of you might want to get involved with, is we're working with Citizens Utility Board to work on both sides of that equation of heat pump adoption, both the contractor side and the public awareness side. So one of the first steps that we're going to do is I have an intern who's going to just call up a bunch of HVAC dealers and just find out where we are, like who knows what they're talking about, who doesn't, who needs more education, just to kind of like understand what we're dealing
Yeah,
with. And
Kathy.
I'm super curious about whatever lists of
Yeah,
contractors. you
let's share
guys-
them. I mean, plus any
Yeah.
that you have, let's get together on that. Kathy Kelly, you had a question. Thank you, Kathy.
Mhm.
To Kathy's. My question's kind of the same. I was looking,
Okay.
I had read that there's a thing called a portable heat pump that I wanted to find one for a small room in our house. It's unheated. And I was wondering if anybody had any references. So it's the same thing.
Derek, I think you're on. I think
Derek.
you looked into that, didn't you?
He's posting things in the chat as well.
Yes, I am.
Derek, go
Can you
ahead.
repeat the question again?
Oh, yes, I had this similar question, and it's just, I was looking for a portable heat pump that I could use to heat an unheated room in our house, just a small room. I read that they had portable ones that you could get.
Yeah, I haven't done much research on portable heat pumps, but I mean, if the technology seems like that they're compact enough. I mean, we have a larger heat pump for our ducted system in our house, but then we have a smaller one. It's called a mini split, and it's not huge. It's attached to the wall, but the concept of having a heat pump this portable, I think would make sense. The only thing that I'm not sure about is it needs to draw heat from someplace, and our heat pumps draw heat from the outside. And we have, for example, a hot water heater that's a heat pump. And the way that it heats the water is it draws warm air from the room it's in. And so whatever that portable system does, you'll need to have part of it somewhere else that you're not trying to heat, right? Outside or otherwise. So I'm not sure exactly how that would be set up, but that is a sort of a limitation, I think, of heat pumps that you'll have to factor in.
The article I saw said something about you just need to have window, you need a certain kind of thing in the window for an exit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
Yeah,
a
so
mini-
it could be like a air conditioning unit.
Yeah, but I
That's-
have it in
yeah.
one place because I don't need to move it. I just need to have it in that one room, but it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense.
You could
Yeah.
get,
This
excuse
is
me,
Pam. I
One at a
was
time, please.
I did a
Yeah.
lot of research when I moved here on getting the most energy efficient air conditioning units. I didn't need heat pumps, but they did come both with a heating and cooling capacity, both the portables that you could move around and the ones you would install through the door, through the window. And they have inverters in them, so they're a heat pump versus a traditional air conditioner, and they make them in the smaller size. You'll just have to do some research. I think LG that makes them, and a company whose name I've forgotten now makes them as well, the really efficient ones.
Well, anything you
Okay.
find out, please put
Yeah,
it up,
send it.
get it on the website.
I will.
Yeah, Robin, go ahead. Make
Yep. So what I'm wondering, and I hesitate in my community, I'm very careful about going ahead and talking about the IRA so much because in my community, if something's not going to be available right now, they're going to be very disappointed if I spend their time explaining it to them. So, I mean, I've talked to my state representative a couple of times, but it's great that all that money is there. But the question is, does Illinois have their programs in place yet to be able to give back those rebates or, provide those to the vendors or whatever it might be? Because if I go out and talk to a few people, they're going to say, well, I can't go out and get it now. And why are you doing this? Because I'll just forget. So
please go to Rewiring America and and look at the IRA. It's way over in the top right. Many of the things, the rebates start next year, and you can get the information on that.
Right. I'm just saying, so every state has to manage it themselves, though, Tom. And all I'm wondering about is if Illinois is ready to go, because I know some states have actually already been using some of their money. So that's why it's hard in some communities, to talk about that because it's going to be a very short-term thing for them.
Yeah. So I think the chapter ought to look into that. I think we'll take note of that. And
Yeah.
thank you very much, Robin.
Sure.
Pam, there's no last name there, but go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, I was just gonna say about the portable heat pump. I was looking into it because I have a poorly conditioned space above the garage, and Amazon has several on there for maybe between $400 and $600. And you just have to have like a window where you can stick a hose out, sort of like a window air conditioner. They do make a U-shaped one that looks like a window air conditioner, but they also have one that will sit inside your room. It's maybe a couple feet tall and maybe a foot wide or something. And the only thing about it that I was a little bit concerned about is in the summer when the air conditioner is running, it does have a pan where it collects water when it's dehumidifying. And so, if you're in a carpeted space or a place where it's, you might spill the water out, that could be a problem for you to manage.
Okay. Okay, Jeff Miller.
Tom, I also see information in the chat from Kathy.
Oh, yeah. We'll send the chat to everybody, by the way. So go ahead, Jeff Miller. Welcome.
Yes. A few of you probably know who I am. I know Tracy McFadden over there, wherever he went, knows who I am. So I'm the president of the Fox Valley Electric Auto Association. I recognized what you guys are all struggling with as far as finding contractors. And the contractors are typically adding on quite a lot of money for what isn't that expensive of a system. So when I look at the prices they are offering, it's pretty outrageous. So I decided to take matters in my own hands and start my own work. But that led down an interesting path because the supply houses, HVAC supply houses, won't sell directly to individuals. It doesn't matter what certifications you have or what knowledge you have. Now, electrical supply houses don't care. You walk in there, I bought meter panels and all sorts of stuff. It's not a problem. But HVAC supply houses are different. So, as they say, if you can't beat them, join them. So I've started up my own electrical and mechanical company.
All right, maybe we'll tap you as a contractor, huh?
Absolutely. And I'm trying not to plug myself exactly here, but that is at a high level, my goal is to help people on that journey, right? That's my goal. So, yeah, I'm just starting out. I've just got the business registered yesterday. So I've hopefully buy insurance tomorrow and so on and so forth. And I won't be working in Chicago for those who are curious. Chicago has certain requirements that I have to apprentice with someone, and I'm not really looking to do that.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, it's like I said, I'm trying not to plug myself, but at the same time, I feel all of your pain. I started out, I do a lot of my own electrical work. I've done tons of charging installs for people, stuff like that. So.
And for everybody, Jeff is an absolute wizard of electric vehicles. So we've got some real talent with Tracy, and I know a bit about it myself. So in our last 5 or 7 minutes, I guess what else we got? Bruce, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, the comment that what's available in each state. While I realize that each state has its own separate programs, the IRA benefits that are conveyed through IRS tax benefits are all there now for your 2023 taxes, which you're going to file. If you buy an electric car, you'll get a tax credit this year. Next year, it'll be more of a true rebate program. So those programs are operating right now on the federal level. So you can still have those discussions with people, and then there might be different programs at the state, which you need to catch up on. That's all.
Yeah, so I just want to mention that before we leave, we're going to have a lot of stuff we're going to try and put out there on the website. We're not going to invent things we don't have to invent. There's tremendous amount of information. For example, on the Oak Park website, they have a whole section, contractors, the Rewiring America. So we're over the next month or so, we're going to be gathering up all that information and try and make it available. And everybody on this call tonight, we're here for you. And if you don't know who to contact, we'll make sure that the links are on the email that we'll send out after this meeting, so you know who to contact. Worst case, contact me, and I'll put you in touch with people. And I think to kind of close it out, Derek, there's Cynthia, and then you, Derek. In fact, I'd like Derek to maybe have some closing comments. But Cynthia, do you have something before we move to Derek?
Yes, I just wanted to say, if you go to our website, climaterealitychicago.com, it's not .org, we have right on the homepage some information about the pledge, a button to push to get to the pledge and take it, and also a referral to, or a link to our resources page, which does have the Oak Park contractors and has a number of other things about the IRA, and there's quite a bit of information there. So if you haven't taken the pledge, you can take it right there on the website and you can get additional information.
Thank you. Derek, you had your hand up. I don't see you now, but I'm interested. Derek is one of the few people that's done everything. And I mean, he's got a nice, what is it, EV6 electric car? I mean, he's done all this stuff. Go ahead, Derek. Close out the meeting, please.
Oh, sure. Oh, no pressure. I just wanted to add a comment that, purchasing, make all the things that were said around, planning that Pam mentioned, and preparing for these purchases are all really important. One thing that I kind of dismissed myself early on was insulation, which is very boring. And honestly, it's very messy too. Like oftentimes to insulate your home, and our house is again like 100 years old or more, they had to cut huge sections of drywall in our ceilings and in our walls to fill in these gaps. And it was a messy process, but far and away it was the most cost-effective way to improve our home, just hands down. It was a couple $1,000s to insulate our home, and we immediately got a 20% improvement in the efficiency of our home. I mean, we needed 100,000 BTUs to heat, and that went down to 80,000. And even if we didn't switch to electric heat pumps, that's just that much less heating, and therefore that much less fuel, gas, right, that we were using to heat our home. So I thought of that especially for the person who was commenting about the space above the garage. I know those spaces are pretty notorious for they're hard to heat, but insulation may also be like a really good move. And a heat pump is worth noting that they're not as powerful as a gas furnace. They don't blow as much hot air. Heat pumps are kind of more like slow and steady. They're constantly on, they're constantly whirring away. And when you have a poorly insulated space, they don't perform super well. And so it's really important to actually do what's called a blower door test. It's a way they can actually use a tool to measure how much leakage is there in your home. So that was one of the first things we did. And I think that's a really important thing to do before you do any of this stuff, because you will save money regardless. And it will mean you have to buy fewer heat pumps or smaller heat pumps, and you will have to do less work. So it's boring, but it's very important. And it's something that I think people have been harping on for decades now. But I found it just to be very much the case for us. So just wanted to make sure that point was made, but otherwise everything that was shared here tonight was really great.
Thank you, Derek. And Derek did a member meeting for us. I think it was back at actually two of them. I think the first one was in January, where he talked about the beginning of his trip moving to Electrifying and everything. And I think it was, what was it, in April, I think, Derek, you did a complete focus on heat pumps. And that's
Right.
all on our YouTube channel. We'll make sure that's in the link when we send out the notes. And you can watch this video. You can actually go, as if you're at the member meeting, and hear it. We can make the slides available to you. We save all that. So I think we're sitting at about 7:15, which is our end time. And geez, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. If we didn't get to your chat, if you asked a question in the chat and we didn't get to it, I will make sure we get back to you. If I don't have the answer, we got people who can answer everything here. So special thanks go out to Derek for being here with all of his experience tonight and giving us a hands-on experience of every part of this. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Hi.
All right, good night.
Night.
So